thanks everybody for being with us and joining us for today's webinar. Our topic today is super important, getting organized. For those of you who know me, you might be wondering, why is Matt leading this conversation about being organized? I want to be able today to scratch the surface on some approaches to organization, both in terms of organizing our time and our energy, also organizing our tasks and the various things that we're asked to do in our ministry. So I want to introduce some principles, some concepts, some approaches, some practical tools or thought patterns that you might be able to use right now in helping organize yourself, your ministry, and those who you minister with. The approach I want to take today is a little bit, it's going to be instructional. I want to be able to introduce to you some of these best practices and these principles when it comes to organization. I want to introduce a couple of self-reflection questions too, that we often use in the coaching that we do to help focus and tease out really what the priorities should be, or where you ought to be able to start, or at least one of the many places where you might consider starting, just to help get some traction. Breaking down a problem into smaller parts is one of the surest ways to be able to address it. And so I want to do a few things today in the questions that I'll invite you to consider that can help us do that. As always, you can feel free to add information into the chat. There's a Q&A feature, so you can feel free to ask questions along the way. Please know in the Q&A feature, I can read those questions. In the chat feature, everyone who's with us live will be able to read those comments and questions. So if you mean to share something specifically with me, put it in the Q&A. If you want to share it with everybody, you can go ahead and put it in the chat. We are recording this session. It should be available in the next week or so. If you want to come back to this conversation, share it with somebody else. However you'd like to do that, just know that it will be posted on our website, learnwithocp.org. So before we get too far along, let's take a moment virtually. I know you can see me. I can't see you, though I can see your names. We have 64 of us who are currently live, 65 of us that are currently live. And even though we can't see each other, we know one another are there, our coworkers here in this vineyard. So before we do anything, let's pray. What I want to do is I'm going to use the reading and the concluding prayer appointed for today's Liturgy of the Hours, just as an easy way for us to start. So let's take a moment on this Thursday to quiet our hearts and our minds. We're joining from all four of the time zones here in the United States. I see some of our friends from Canada, some of our friends from Ireland joining us. So wherever we are, whatever time of day it is, let's call to mind all of those who are in need of our prayers, all of those who have asked us to pray for them, for one another, for the communities where we serve. And let us remember that we are always in God's holy presence as we hear from the prophet Amos. He who made the Pleiades and Orion, who turns darkness into dawn and darkens day into night, who summons the waters of the sea and pours them out upon the surface of the earth, whose name is Lord. Let us pray. All-powerful and ever-living God, with you there is no darkness. From you nothing is hidden. Fill us with the radiance of your light. May we understand the law you have given us and live it with generosity and faith. Grant this through Christ our Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Matt Reichert. I'm the director of the Center for Learning, a division of OCP, and very glad to have you with us today for this webinar. Welcome to those of you who are with us live, the 78 of you who are with us live. Greetings to those of you who are watching this recording after the fact. Again, thank you for spending time with us as we explore this important topic. I am going to share my screen real quickly. There we go. Hopefully you can now see my screen. As I mentioned before we started here, before the prayer, uh, my goal today is to scratch the surface. I want to give you a framework for asking questions to tease out the organizational priorities and goals that you're looking for. I want to provide you with some principles that you might think about utilizing in your quest for getting and staying organized. And then I want to show you a couple of examples of tools or approaches or models that you could incorporate or that are easily adaptable that you might be able to start with from here. I want to say, one thing we do in the Center for Learning that's grown significantly over the last year is ministry coaching, individual ministry coaching, where we work with someone like you in a parish on a particular goal. And really your coach accompanies you through the process of how do you do this, right? So I've been coaching people lately on how do we create a liturgy committee? How do I rebuild my choir? How do I get better at designing rehearsals? How do I get along with my pastor better? But a lot of people we've been coaching on, how do I get better at being organized? So the only reason I mention that to you now is to say, if there's anything of interest here, or if you have other additional questions, please feel free to reach out through our website, learnwithocp.org, and be happy to schedule some time just to talk more, to share with you what ministry coaching looks like, and to see how we can work with you maybe individually on this particular goal. All right, so let's dive in. Here's what I would like you to do first. Best practice, both in coaching, but also in goal setting, is to really imagine, to picture what it is we're working towards. So at this moment, all of us have come to this conversation on getting and staying organized for one or for many reasons, right? So I want you to reflect on the following, just for yourself. There's no reason to put this in the chat. So I want you to answer for yourself the following questions. What is your goal? What's the goal of being here? Is it to better organize stuff or space? Maybe your office is a little messy. Is it to better organize your schedule? Better organize time? Is it to better organize your energies and your bandwidth and how you organize your work week, your work day? Is it to organize your life? What is it that you're looking to accomplish? I want you also to answer the question, so given that goal, why is it important? In what way is it important to you? Is it because by being organized, you would have better use of your time? You would have more energy? You would be at your best? Is it because you need to move offices? This is the time of year where some people are moving jobs or maybe moving offices, maybe rearranging something. Is there that type of practical reality? So again, what is the goal? Why is this important? And then the third question is, what difference will it make? Is it just because you feel like you'll be equipped to do your job better? Will your liturgies be more effective? Will your leadership be better? Will others have the information and resources they need more easily to be successful? What is the difference it will make? You might also ask, what difference will it make if you don't do it? What's the consequence? If I don't meet that goal, this will happen. So take a moment. If you're watching the recording of this, you have the luxury of being able to pause the conversation right now to take as much time as you'd like to reflect on this. But think about these things. What's the goal? Why is it important? What difference will it make? What will it look like? How will your life or your ministry look if you accomplish this goal? How will your life and ministry look if you don't accomplish this goal? So the reason I ask you to do this at this point, and the reason why I think these questions can be useful at the outset of any endeavor in your personal or ministerial life, is it's helpful for us to frame what it is we're working at, right? And to break this down. This is going to be the theme of today, breaking something down into its smaller parts. So that's going to be an important reality for us. But visualizing the importance, visualizing the difference. Boy, I can picture my life when I'm not stressed out about doing things at the last minute, when I'm not stressed out about the piles of things in my office, when I'm not stressed out because other people are depending on me to do something or to find something and I can't deliver. By picturing what it looks like for that change to occur, it can help motivate. It can also help clarify what we need to do in order to get there. So visualization techniques are super helpful as we set out on any sort of endeavor, any sort of change, right? So keeping in mind, excuse me, your responses or maybe the multiple responses you have to these 3 bullet points. Let's take a look at a couple of principles. These are not mine. These are not OCPs. These are just general guiding principles that are sort of at the core recommendation of most things you will find when it comes to the social anthropological recommendations of organization. Again, time management, organizing space, organizing life. So I've summarized these things and maybe summarized them in my particular way. But know that I'm bringing you here sort of a meta-analysis of the various schools of thought that you'll see in other places, right? But these are the things that tend to be the principles at the heart of being organized. First, focus on what is important. I should say that these principles are in no particular order. Okay, these are in no particular order. Focus on what's important. There's a little bit of that goal setting, a little bit of that prioritization that happens. I spend most of my time working with bishops, priests, parishes all over the country to try to accomplish a ministerial reality or a liturgical vision or a strategic reality. And key to all of the different kinds of work we do with all of those audiences is the process of prioritization and goal setting. If everything is a priority, then nothing is. If everything is important, then nothing is. And what I mean by that is not to say that all of the things you need to accomplish or you need to pay attention to don't have some importance. They all have some importance. But you need to focus on the priorities of what needs to or can be done now. Because if you don't break it down or focus, if your list of I need to organize these 17 things is where you're starting, it's going to be too overwhelming. You need to focus on what's important today, or what's important first, or what's important for this summer, so that you can accomplish those things, so you can get to the rest of your list later. So focus on what's important. The other thing that's at the heart of this principle, and I don't know if any of you have experienced this. I know I have. There is an element here focusing on what's important of also degree. So not just number or not just topic focus and prioritization, but the importance of degree. I'm the kind of person that when I hear someone say, it just needs to be good enough, I bristle at that. Because we know the importance and the value of our work, especially when it comes to the sacred liturgy. And there are some things where that principle of good enough should not apply. But sometimes in our practical organizational tasks, good enough is exactly what we need to strive for. I can remember when I was in college and I was moonlighting on the weekends as a music director in a parish, and we had to organize our music library. It was a mess. It wasn't a disaster, but it was a mess. And I, instead of developing a process to just get all of our music in file folders, in file cabinets, in a simple, organized setting, I developed a complex system of different file folders would be different colors depending on the nature of the piece. And on the label, we would put in the piece, but also the composer and the text author and the tune and the season and the scripture passage and all of these things. And I, on paper, developed a very sexy system for filing music. I am many years removed from college, and I'm sure that those files are still not organized. Right? Because my system that I put the importance on wasn't what was important. What was important was getting the music organized in a functional way. So focusing on what's important is both a priority issue. It's also a degree issue. This is the same when it comes to organizing your time, organizing your energy. What is it we need to accomplish? What do we have to prioritize? And to what degree are really important questions to be able to ask yourself. 2 is another principle. Again, these are in no particular order. Lists are critical. Now, I'm the kind of person who naturally appreciates a to-do list or a list of my thoughts. I know not everybody is maybe hardwired that way. Lists are incredibly important because it's related to the first principle, right? One of the things I like to recommend when I'm coaching people, and the topic is organization, is to find a sheet of paper and put down every single thing that needs to be done. And by getting it out of our heads, not only do we identify what needs to be done, and hopefully things don't slip through the cracks, but we can't prioritize what needs to be done until we have all of the raw material in one place. So lists are helpful, not only for remembering and for retention, but also for prioritization. But when making a list, that first part of the second principle is really important. Break something down into smaller parts. Your to-do list should not say, organize choir room. Right? Your to-do list should say, well, the subsets of file the music from Easter Sunday, restack and wipe down chairs, or whatever this might be, right? Dry clean choir robes. I'm just making up stuff here, right? But it should break down what those things are so you can prioritize them, right? So you know what they are so things don't slip through the cracks. You can identify what these pieces are. So focus on what's important, both in terms of priority and degree. Break down your tasks if they need to so that you can have a list of all the things that need to be done. 3, manage your time with clear boundaries. Boundaries are not always, when it comes to boundaries of our own time, our own energy, our own bandwidth, many of us in pastoral ministry are very poor at this skill. I have in the parentheses here, pay yourself first. My mother was a banker before she retired. And so I remember as a child growing up, when we would get all of our personal finance lessons from our banker mother, whenever we got a card with $10 in it for a birthday, rarely did it make it to our piggy bank. Almost always did it make it to a savings account, which I'm grateful for now. I wasn't so grateful for then. But in talking about strategies towards savings, I don't think it was something my mom came up with. I think it was something someone else who talks about personal savings came up with, was when you get your paycheck, pay yourself first. When you get your paycheck, if your goal is to save $50, don't spend your money and hope there's $50 left over. First, put the $50 in your savings account and then do things. If you don't pay yourself first, you're never going to pay yourself. The same principle applies to time. The same principle applies to the time that it takes to do the physical organization that we need. So this is how this relates. I said these principles are in no particular order, and that's true, but they do relate in the cascade. So let's say I prioritized what I need to do, and I've broken it down, and I've made my list. If I don't then say, Tuesday afternoon is blocked off for me to do this, and when I get that call, or I get that invitation, or I get that, hey, could you spend some time with me to meet about blank? I can say, I can't on Tuesday because it's been blocked off. I have a clear time or boundary bandwidth. Same thing goes, for your day off. Same thing goes with the end of your workday, etc. Now, in saying all this, I don't want to sound naive or pie-eyed here. I get that there are times when push comes to shove and something has to move. That happens all the time. However, not everything that competes for your time is equally competing for your time. But if we don't intentionally manage our time with clear boundaries, we can easily slip into a situation where functionally we behave as anything that pops up has a co-equal demand on our time. And that means we're never going to get the traction to address the things on our list that came from our priorities. If that makes sense. So manage your time with clear boundaries. I'm going to give you some examples of strategies to do that by the time that we're done here. Okay. Fourth principle, use simple calendars and planners. Now, this might be obvious and might be a no-brainer, but you need to use some sort of calendar or planner to manage time, but also to manage tasks. Block off time, schedule it. If it's something that's important, schedule it. If that time is scheduled, don't schedule something else at the same time. But use simple methods. Because I get to travel a lot to see parishes and dioceses, and I'm at a lot of conferences. Hello to many of you that I see at many conferences. It's interesting to me to see how people schedule themselves, how they plan their time. And I have seen a lot of beautiful and very complicated systems to manage calendars and times or tasks. If it's simple, you'll use it. If it's simple, you'll stick with it. If you don't have a system, you're not going to be as effective. But having a system shouldn't get in the way. The goal of using a calendar and planner is to make you effective, not for you to manage some sort of calendar and planner system. So using simple calendars and planners is important. This is the principle where sometimes the wheels come off. Principle 5, delegate tasks. One of the benefits of the first two principles, focusing on what's important, prioritizing, getting everything down, big, small, getting everything in one list and prioritizing what's important by breaking things down and making a list is this sets you up for two realities. One, you will look at all of these things and realize you are one talented, energetic, capable person who cannot do all of this yourself. You shouldn't do all of this yourself. So give your permission to not do all of it yourself. Second, you now have that identified laundry list of things that you can hand off to somebody else. We'll talk in a second when we look at examples of how you might evaluate what tasks are capable for delegation. But by creating those lists, by going through the process of priorities, you can see my priority right now is going to be around managing our rehearsals and schedules and ministry schedules for the fall. I need to do that because of my role and my strengths and my gifts. I also see one of our needs is to refile all of the music from Easter. I don't need to refile all the music. I could find someone who would be willing to help me with that, right? I don't need to call the piano tuner, or I don't need to call the person who's going to tune the organ. I don't need to polish all of the handbells, right? I don't need to go in and report everything on one license. I need to make sure all of those things happen, but I don't need to necessarily do them all myself. Now, you have to go through the process then of identifying and inviting people, training people, but this process of documenting everything, prioritizing, breaking it down, making a list, setting your boundaries, right, also helps make possible the reality of delegating some of these tasks and some of the work, right? Again, there is a difference between you needing to make sure certain tasks happen and you needing to do those tasks yourself. Manage the tasks where possible. Don't do all of the tasks where it's not necessary for you yourself to do them. Next, number 6, manage communications and distractions. This is something that I profess to not be great at, but I know in my visualizing, I can imagine what it would be like if I was better at it. So I keep trying to work at it. Managing communications and distractions. Sometimes our communications are distracting, right? If you are the kind of person who constantly checks your email and responds to email when it comes in, you're never going to do anything other than be responding to emails or answering the phone or returning phone calls. So maybe not every day, maybe not every week, but certainly in these time periods when you are blocking off time to physically organize your office or manage your time better, manage communications and distractions by scheduling for them. So some people find it successful or helpful to say, schedule in 3 or 4 15-minute times throughout your day. I'm making this up, so tailor this however it makes sense. 3 or 4 15-minute times throughout the day. Those are the times when I check my voicemail, when I check my email inbox. And in between then, if I don't have something else going on, I could respond to it. If there's an emergency email that pops up, sure, I can hop in and respond to it. But other than those times, I'm not going to constantly monitor my inbox because I need to focus on what I scheduled myself to do as part of my prioritization efforts. I need to focus on the things on my list that have to happen today or they're not going to happen at all. So plan for time when there's communications or other distractions, right? Plan for that time so that you can do that. You have to be responsive to communications. Don't get me wrong. Again, I'm not trying to sound naive here. But if you don't plan for when you will respond to those messages, you're going to be prone to always responding to those messages. This not only goes for your work day or when it is you're doing your ministry work, maybe it's in the evenings or on weekends, but it'll also apply to when you're not on the clock. This, again, this boundary issue is really significant and pervasive in our field. I get emails from a lot of people in pastoral ministry, 11:45 at night, 1 in the morning, 3 in the morning, right? All throughout the day. And that tells me that, again, we're checking our messages at times when we shouldn't be. And I've been there. I'm sure I will be there again. I get what it's like to feel overwhelmed and like you can't get out of the cycle, right? But one way you can help get out of the cycle is by setting boundaries and scheduling that time. This week, try it for a week just to get used to it. It'll be uncomfortable for some of you. This week, for these time blocks, that's when I will check and respond to my emails. Doing it 3 or 4 times means you're not going to go 24 hours without checking your email necessarily, right? Because you still want to be responsive, but you don't need to check it every minute. So manage communications and distractions. Next, again, this is another thing I'm not always great at. Reduce clutter and be ruthless. I try to schedule a few minutes at the start of my day and the end of my day to reduce desk clutter. So I don't have to get to a point where I can't find my keyboard on my desk because the clutter has piled up so much. I try to find a few minutes to handle the few things that come in. This happens a lot with mail. And on behalf of publishers, I apologize. It happens with catalogs. It happens with postcards. It happens with all the things we send you too. Reduce clutter. The be ruthless thing is really important, especially when it comes to professional tasks. Being ruthless means, if you're like me, there will be things you will keep because, well, that seems like a nice pen I got at the convention. I should keep it. Or I don't know when I'm going to need this, or I don't need this now, but maybe someday I will, right? You probably won't. Right? Or if you do, you'll probably be able to find it again, right? I think of this, I've started this task. So for those of you who are coming to NPM or Eucharistic Congress or other places where maybe I'll see you this summer, before I leave my hotel room, I sort out the tote bag. And I don't need the can koozie, and I don't need that notebook, and I don't need that hand sanitizer. I don't need that lip balm from that company or whatever. I don't need it. So I don't bring it with me. Be ruthless. Do you really need it? Because again, if you don't say no to it now, it's going to stack up and you're going to have to say no to it later when it's become a bigger problem. Nip it in the bud. Be ruthless to clutter. Similar to this, when it comes to eliminating clutter, it might be just eliminating things. It might be altogether, so you don't even have to think about it. It might be things like I keep, of course, my Uh, I keep my past ministry plans. We should all do that. We should all keep our past outlines for our celebrations. You don't need to keep them physically. I know someone, a music director, mentor of mine, who would put together a binder for every Sunday or every major celebration. So I could go back and pull off Pentecost 2007. And in that binder was the printout of the music order, was a copy of the worship aid, and then was a copy of the score of every single piece we used in that liturgy. The part of me that likes organization for organization's sake says, well, that's kind of a cool system, but why? Right? Surely having digitally the outline for what we did at Pentecost 2007 is enough, right? Be ruthless. Digitize things. Digitize things where you can, or keep one copy of something someplace if it's important, but be ruthless. Would the person after you find it important to have this thing? If the answer is no, get rid of it. All of us, I think, need to think about what happens after us, right? Because at some point, someone's going to be doing our ministry after we're gone. And I like to think about this. I like to plan for winning the lottery. Because again, I know we're all going to leave and retire, and at some point we're going to go to heaven. And so sometimes thinking about that is a little too morbid. So I like to have my lottery plan, meaning if I won the lottery tonight, how long would it take me to get out of what I'm doing now and hand it off to somebody else, right? So when I look at something, I think of it through the lottery principle. I got this handy dandy, whatever it is. If I won the lottery today and left and someone else came in tomorrow, would they think it's important to take up space or time? Probably not. Out it goes. Helps me be prepared to win the lottery. Next, build routines and systems. This goes along with scheduling time, right? This goes along with delegating a little bit, with making lists. This also goes with setting up your future self to be able to be organized, both again, organizing time, organizing energy, organizing things. So for example, when I, have my choir binders or choir folders, right? I will put them, or the folders I take out of the file cabinet, in a place where the ones that I need to file now are right close at hand. So it's easy for me to say, lay them out on the table and have the choir hand them out, right? Building a routine and a habit and a system. I put out the folders on the table or on the step or on the piano or wherever it is. And we take a few minutes at that rehearsal for my choir to turn in their music. I know people, and maybe this is you, and maybe there's a good reason for it. So if there's a good reason, please don't hear my criticism incorrectly. But I know a lot of people who collect folders from their choir members, and then they themselves take it apart and separate it. Don't do that. Right? It's more work than is needed, right? Delegating sometimes means building routines and systems for those processes, right? Where do things go? This is those of you who have ever been in a classroom, especially an elementary or middle school classroom. Build the routines for classroom management. How do papers get turned in? How do papers get turned back? How do you handle lines? How do you handle dismissals? What are those ministry equivalent things that you can think of for routines and systems to implement? The summer is a great time for this, especially if your choir has the summer off or your instrumentalists have the summer off, where you can spend this summer thinking of or asking others what they do. So in the fall, you can implement those new plans. But routines and systems are huge. And then the last thing, and sorry that this goes behind the logo there, set, communicate, and reinforce your organizational expectations. I'm going to say it again. Set, communicate, reinforce your organizational expectations. Organizational, again, physical space and things, your time, your energy. If you have said Tuesday afternoon is my time for these 45 minutes to report my one license usage, or to put together my music lists for the 4 Sundays from now, or whatever that task might be, and you put it in, and someone says, hey, can I meet with you on Tuesday afternoon at that same time? You need to be able to say, I'm sorry, I'm unavailable. Reinforce that boundary and that expectation. If there's something that's helpful for your colleagues, your coworkers, or people you minister with to understand how you have set these boundaries or delegated these tasks or prioritized things, share that with them. That's a really important. I found this a lot when I was director of worship for our family of parishes, where my colleagues in faith formation, because today they're thinking about a right of election or something like that that's going to matter months and months and months from now, but because that's the liturgy they need to focus on. And this is the time of year when they're setting curriculum and calendars. Today is not the day where my priority is talking about the time that we'll have rehearsal for the sending of the elect. That's not my priority right now. It doesn't mean it's not important, but I need to communicate to them why right now I can't do it, and then schedule it for a time that it makes sense. But setting, communicating, and reinforcing your organizational expectations means you're starting to shape the space around you to be supportive to the way you need to organize your time, your space, your priorities, so that you're set up for success, right? Don't feel bad about setting the boundaries and claiming the time that you need. Again, you have to be responsive to emergencies and all those things. I get it. But don't feel bad saying to someone, I'm sorry, I'm not available at that time because you set that time for your weekly routine. If that's what you need, and by succumbing to the whim of somebody else's schedule, now you're going to be doing that planning or that reporting at 10 o'clock tonight. No. Set, communicate, reinforce. Be flexible where necessary, but set, communicate, reinforce. So, given all of that, here are a few examples of some strategies or tools that can be useful. And then I would love to respond to specific questions or ideas, or if you have something, those of you who are watching live, that you'd like to share, this is what I do, and share ideas with others, we can get to that. So a couple of examples. Some of these things you might have heard before. Some of these things might be new to you. All of them are adaptable. All right, that's the important thing. All of them can be customizable to what will work for you. I'm going to say it again. It wasn't one of the principles, or directly, but don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Don't let, but I have to have everything in place, get in the way of starting something small, right? So hopefully some of these examples will do that. I want to share with you something called the Eisenhower matrix. I'm going to show you what it is and how it works. It's a helpful way, sort of a day in, day out way to help identify what you need to focus on, to prioritize. It can also help suggest what could be delegated. So that's a helpful tool. I want to talk about Kanban boards. This is a project management thing that's used in a lot of organizations and businesses, but as a thought pattern, I think it can be a helpful way to organize your time and focus on priorities and goals day in and day out. This is something that I use and have found great success using. And so I'll share a little bit more about how my process with that works. 5 and 10 minute menu. I'm going to tell you what that is here before I move off of this page. The 5 and 10 minute menu is something you could do and start doing before this webinar is over. So I'll tell you about that in a second. And then time blocking. I've already told you a little bit about what time blocking can look like in your schedule. That's the pay yourself first model, but I'll show you some things about that. Before we move from this slide, let me tell you what the 5 and 10 minute menu is. Sometimes, speaking for myself, maybe this matches your experience. Sometimes I just don't know how to get started. And sometimes I feel like certain tasks need to all be done at one time. I'm going to give you an example from life, not from ministry. For the longest time, I would wash my clothes or do loads of laundry. And I would think, this Saturday morning, I really have to schedule some time to fold all of my laundry. Because in my mind, I was thinking, folding laundry is a task. I do it all at once, right? I portion it out all at once. What the 5 and 10 minute menu will help you do at its best is, how do you maximize the little 5 and 10 minutes you have available throughout the day so you can best utilize that time, make some of your standing tasks bite-sized so you can avoid having to fold all of your laundry at once. So what this strategy is I have a list I call it a menu because I don't know. Menu is more fun. It feels like I can choose. It feels more control. A list can sometimes seem oppressive. Um, but I have a menu of everything that I can do professionally, personally. That is a sort of a standing thing that I need to do in 5 minutes or less, or things that I can do in 10 minutes or less. So, things I can do in 10 minutes or less. I can respond to 6 emails. I can fold half a basket of laundry. I can, because I do a lot of work from home, I can empty and reload the dishwasher. I can walk a third of a mile. I can um, uh, download the TIFF files for my worship aids for next weekend. I can, whatever those tasks are, I can report last Sunday's one license usage. Whatever can be done in 5 minutes or less or 10 minutes or less, I have it written on a list on my desk. So when a meeting ends early, or a phone call cancels, right, or someone doesn't answer, or that task that I thought would take an hour takes 45 minutes, I can take a break. That's important. That's on my list, actually. What can I do in 10 minutes? I can read a paragraph of scripture, or I can be quiet for 10 minutes, right? I can go to my menu and pick something. What it means is, and I'm using laundry as an example, but one license reporting, I keep talking about that. Many of us save it to do it once a year or twice a year or whenever it is after a season. But if I just did it in pieces, I don't have to do that whole afternoon of reporting where I have to go back and look. I don't want to spend an hour on Saturday folding my laundry. I would rather take 4 different times throughout the week where I have 5 minutes, fold some socks, and have that hour back on Saturday and feel ahead. So a 5-10 minute menu is super effective. That's what that hack is. And it's real easy. Right now, create a table, create it on the back of a napkin, back of a list, whatever, 2 columns, 5 minutes or less, 10 minutes or less. Start listing. Throughout the day, you'll think of other things to add to your list. When you have that window of time, pick something and do it, right? Okay, Eisenhower matrix. This is what an Eisenhower matrix looks like. It's a decision tree. And you'll notice across the top, you have, and you can see this comes from Asana, which does a lot of project management or task management software. But an Eisenhower matrix is not their invention. You can find other examples. We're trying to ask, what is something urgent or not urgent? And also, is it something important or not important? And everything could fall in one of these 4 quadrants, everything that demands your time. So if it's urgent and important, this is a task with deadlines or consequences that I need to do right now. It is urgent, it is important. If it's important, but it's not urgent, means it needs to be done, but maybe not right now. Well, then schedule it. It's something that contributes to long-term success, or it needs to be done. But I don't have to do it this afternoon, but schedule it so that I do it at some point in time where it makes sense, but I can get to something more urgent right now. If something is urgent, but not important, delegate it. If it doesn't require your specific skill set, find a volunteer, involve someone else in the process. This is a great way to engage people who want to be involved in your parish or in your ministry or in another way, and get them involved and give them other responsibility. It's a great way to involve volunteers. I do a lot of training on how to recruit volunteers, right? So if you've been a part of those conversations, you're hearing some repeat of my elevator speech. But we need to involve people in small ways so we can grow their involvement to big ways. If you're at a parish, you don't want to have someone show up saying, I'd like to get involved, and say, great, we need a co-chair for the parish festival. That's too big of a leap, right? You get them involved in smaller ways and gradually build their capacity until they are the natural co-chair for the parish festival. Same thing in music ministry, same thing in youth ministry. So finding these smaller things you can delegate. Could you do the reporting for me? Could you file some music? Could you pull these files? Could you make some copies? Right? Those are things that need to be done, but it's not important to your skill set. Others could do it just as well as you. And then finally, if it's not important or not urgent, just delete it. Just get rid of it. Some of these are things that demand your time that you don't need to engage with. Some of these are things that we maybe without thinking make important or make urgent that don't need to be there, right? Get rid of it. Don't do it, right? Or whatever it might be, just delete it. So the way an Eisenhower matrix works is you don't have to have a physical one. You can. Something comes up. Where does it fall here, right? Think of an example in your ministry or your life of something that would be urgent and important. This is something I need to do today, right? Something pops up, funeral planning. I need to get the information. I need to meet with that family, the person who died last night, because their funeral is coming up and I need to, etc. That is something that would be urgent and important and requires my involvement and my skill set, right? Someone emails me last night saying, my fiance and I are getting married this fall and we'd like to meet with you to talk about our wedding liturgy. I don't need to call them and talk about their wedding liturgy today. It's important, but it's not urgent. We have time. I can schedule that conversation for a different time, right? The funeral last week, the information needs to be reported on one license. I hand that off to one of my volunteers who's really good at reporting this thing, right? I get an email from somebody asking, hey, I would love to demonstrate for you our newest software feature for whatever. Just delete it because you don't need it. You didn't ask for it. It's a phishing thing. Don't worry about it, right? Eisenhower matrix. Next, Kanban board. This is a thing that I have found really helpful to me. Now, I'm showing you two different Kanban boards for a couple of reasons, which I'll talk about in a second. But a Kanban board is basically, it can be a physical board, it can be something electronic, but it's a way for you to keep track of all the things that need to be done, for you to focus on what do I want to commit doing today, and then also identify what already has been accomplished. So in my office, behind my computer, I have a wall. And I make with Post-it notes, not the big like square Post-it notes, but the little ones. When I think about a task where there's something that needs to be done, I write a little Post-it note and I stick it in my to-do. So in this first example here, to-do, or in this bottom example with 4 columns, the backlog. Those are all the things that I know need to be done. So I think of it or I hear about it, I write it down, I stick it on the wall. Then at the beginning of the week, right, or the end of the week before, whatever it might be, I take a look at all of my to-do items and I say, these are the things that I need to make sure get done this week, and I can rearrange my to-do column physically. Then what I do at the end of each day or the beginning of the next day is I think, these are the things that I'm going to accomplish today because they're the most important and most urgent, right? Or I need to do these things in order to get to the other things. I move them. I take the Post-it out of the to-do column and stick it into the doing column. And I have a self-imposed limit. I only can have 3 things in my doing column at any one point in time. That's just a way for me to create a firewall of, I don't want to say I'm doing 15 things right now because then I've lost my prioritization. Right? Sometimes I put something in the doing column, something comes up, and I have to move something else back to the to-do list, right? Sometimes I have to park the doing. Actually, in my doing column at the bottom, I have a parking lot or stuck, where maybe there's something I'm doing, but I'm still waiting to hear back from the diocese, or the thing hasn't arrived from the publisher yet, or my pastor has to review something. So I'll move it down into that box so I can have something else in my doing. But I only have 3 things at a time so I can focus. And then when it's done, I move it to done, and I have room now to move something else into my doing. The example down below has an extra column, review. So depending on your ministry, maybe you need to, you've accomplished something, but it needs to be reviewed by somebody else. Or maybe there's another step somewhere along the way. I now need to hand that off to my supervisor or whatever it is. So there can be a column there because someone else needs to do something with it. It's waiting. It's not done, but your part is done. So you can add a column. So sky's the limit. You can create this however you want. You could take a notebook and on the inside cover of the notebook, open the notebook, turn it on its side, divide that cover into 3 columns and just stick Post-it notes there. Then wherever you go, or in the inside of your physical calendar or planner, wherever you go, you have your Kanban board. It doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be a wall, right? But it's a way to police, what do I need to do? What do I need to make sure happens that somebody else needs to do? What am I going to focus on today? And then how can I make sure that I'm not splitting my time too much? Okay. And then the last thing I want to show you as an example, and then we're going to be close to wrapping up our time batching. This goes along with time blocking. Block off time. I have 10 minutes at the beginning of my day blocked off. No one else can schedule time with me. Or if they try, it shows I'm unavailable. So I can look at my to-do list and I can choose my doing, right, before the day starts. I have time each day throughout the day when I blocked off to respond to emails or check my phone messages or get up and walk around, have a snack, drink a glass of water, right? Things like that. I also, instead of going to the gym and working out for an hour, less than 5 minutes, I can do 10 push-ups. So go do 10 push-ups, right? So whatever those breaks are in your day, block it off. Put in the non-negotiables outside of your control, meetings, whatever, then block off time for planning time. Or I have time right now where I will block off focus time. Next week, I just did this. I blocked off my focus time. I want to make sure I have 2 hours every day, maybe not consecutively, where I can focus on the tasks that need to be done. So I don't know what I'm going to do during that focus time next Wednesday from 10 to 11, but Tuesday evening or Wednesday morning, when I move my Post-it notes from backlog or to do to doing, I know I have 2 hours at least blocked up in my day to address the things I put in doing. Sometimes what I put in doing depends on how much focus time I'm able to commit to that day. I need to write this article. I only have 45 minutes. I don't have enough time. I'm going to put that in tomorrow's focus time, right? But this is the pay yourself first model, right? Batch your time, block off your time so that you know when you pick your doing, Post-it notes or put wherever there, however you would manage it, you have the time available, you know what you're committing to. And those things all are coming from a place of prioritization, right? So I use an Eisenhower matrix thinking pattern. I don't have a physical one. So that the thing that pops up, you get the email from the person. Well, is this going to disrupt what I put in my doing column and my focus time? Nope, it's important but not urgent. I'm going to schedule it and then not think about it for the rest of my day. Or nope, this is a thing that is important and urgent and something else has to get bumped, right? So all of these things, the task batching or time blocking, the Kanban board, the Eisenhower matrix is a way for me to create a structure that works for me. It might not work for you. You can adapt in a way that gives me a chance of not letting my tasks or my time or other people's agendas get away from me. So I'm going to go back to this list, these principles. To again, put them up here. These are just basic best practice principles that you can utilize to think about how you organize your time, your space, your bandwidth, right? I know that this can be overwhelming. Maybe this has been helpful. I'm hoping that you have at least one takeaway where you can say, boy, I'm going to think about that principle more. I didn't think about it that way. Or I'm going to start a 5-minute, 10-minute list and utilize that. Try it for a week. Or for a week, I'm going to try to only do emails during certain times or to block off focus time. Whatever that might be, try a strategy and see what works for you, for how you operate, your personality, what's possible with your context and where you are in life, right? Please know, again, we do a lot of coaching, we do a lot of teaching, we do a lot of resourcing to help folks like you do things like this, to unlock that next level of energy and bandwidth and focus for your ministry. So if ever I can be helpful or Center for Learning can be helpful in talking about coaching or talking about other resources pointing you in the right direction, please let me know. And I love talking to people about their ministry, where they are, what they're experiencing, what works, what doesn't work. And so I'm more than happy to have a conversation just to hear more about you, your ministry, and share some ideas of what I've heard from other people if it's useful. But the important thing is to know, right? Prioritization matters. Breaking it down matters. Paying yourself first, setting and communicating those boundaries and expectations matters. That's the safeguard. You have skills and talents and gifts that other people don't experience in the same way. Your ministry and your energies are important to your community, and you yourself are important to your community and your family and your friends and your loved ones. Be a good custodian of your time and your energy, and don't apologize for it, because we need you to be at your best. So reserve that time. Right? We want you to reserve that time to be successful, not just to check things off a list and be productive, but to be your best, to be your happiest, healthiest, holiest self. So again, hopefully some of these things have helped. Hopefully some of these practical ideas have helped. If so, wonderful. If not, let me know where we missed the mark and what we can do better. And if you'd like to go further, like to go deeper, please let us know. We're more than happy to have conversation about this topic with you if you think it would be helpful, or the people you manage or the people you work with, if you think there could be some benefit there. Thank you for being a part of this webinar. I apologize that we're out of time. There's a lot of ground here to cover, right? Thank you for being part of this webinar. Thank you for the things you do for your community. The ministry that you provide, the witness you provide matters. It matters a lot. It makes a huge difference in the life of your local community, in the life of the church in this country and beyond, whether you hear that or whether you see that or not. It matters. We're grateful for you and we're grateful for what you do. And if we can be instrumental to you and helpful to you in any way, please let us know how we can support you and partner with you better. Again, thanks for being here. God bless you all. Have a wonderful summer. Hopefully I'll see you at some conferences along the way. And please, as always, be in touch. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.